Everyone, welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story while you work or doze, whatever brings you joy. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight we jump back into Erin Hunter's Into the Wild. Chapter 13. Firepaw reached the edge of the ravine and looked down at the camp. He was panting and his paws were slippery with dew. He sniffed the air. He was alone. There was still time to speak to Yellowfang before the others returned from the gathering. Silently, he jumped down the rocky slope and slipped through the gorse tunnel unnoticed. The camp was still and quiet, apart from the muted snuffles of sleeping cats. Firepaw quickly crept around the edge of the clearing to Yellowfang's nest. The old medicine cat was curled up on top of her mossy bedding. "Yellowfang," he hissed urgently. "Yellowfang, wake up, it's important." Two orange eyes opened and glinted in the moonlight. "I wasn't sleeping," meowed Yellowfang quietly. She sounded calm and alert. "You came straight from the gathering to me. That must mean you've heard." She blinked slowly and looked away. "So, Broken Star kept his promise." "What promise?" Firepaw felt very confused. Yellowfang seemed to know more than he did about what was going on. ShadowClan's noble leader promised to drive me from every clan territory. Yellowfang replied dryly. "What did he say about me?" "He warned us that our kits were in danger as long as we sheltered the ShadowClan rogue. He didn't say your name, but ThunderClan guessed who he was talking about. You must leave before the others get back. You're in danger." "You mean they believed Broken Star?" Yellowfang flattened her ears and swished her tail angrily. "Yes," Firepaw meowed urgently. "Darkstripe says you're dangerous. The other cats are scared of what you might do. Tigerclaw is planning to come back and I don't know. I think you should go before they get here." In the distance, Firepaw could hear the yowls of angry cats. Yellowfang struggled stiffly to her paws. Firepaw gave her a nudge to help her up, his mind still spinning with questions. What did Broken Star mean when he warned us to keep a close eye on our kits? He couldn't stop himself from asking. "Would you really do something like that?" "Would I what?" "Would you harm our kits?" Yellowfang flared her nostrils and looked steadily at him. "Do you think so?" Firepaw met her gaze without flinching. "No, I don't believe you would ever harm a kit, but why would Broken Star say such a thing?" The noise of the cats was coming nearer, and with it the sense of aggression and anger. Yellowfang looked wildly from side to side. "Go," Firepaw urged. Her safety was more important than his curiosity. But Yellowfang remained where she was and stared at him. A calm look suddenly came into her wide eyes. "Firepaw, you believe I'm innocent, and I'm grateful for that. If you believe me, then others might. And I know Blue Star will give me a fair hearing. I can't run forever. I'm too old. I shall stay here and face whatever your clan decides for me." She sighed and sank down onto her bony haunches. "But what about Tigerclaw? What if he is headstrong, and he knows the power he has over the other clan cats. They are in awe of him, but even he will obey Blue Star." Rustling in the undergrowth beyond the camp boundary told Firepaw that the cats were almost at the entrance. "Go away, Firepaw," hissed Yellowfang, baring her blackened teeth at him. "Don't make trouble for yourself by being seen with me now. There is nothing you can do for me. Have faith in your leader and let her decide what happens to me." Firepaw realized Yellowfang had made her mind up. He touched his nose to her patchy fur, then crept silently away into the shadows to watch. Through the gorse came the cats, Blue Star first, accompanied by Lionheart. Frostfur and Willowpet were right behind them. Frostfur raced away from the troop immediately and ran towards the nursery, the fur on her tail bristling in alarm. Tigerclaw and Darkstripe strode into the clearing, shoulder to shoulder, looking grim. The others followed behind, with Ravenpaw and Greypaw at the rear. As soon as he saw his friends, Firepaw trotted out to join them. You went to warn Yellowfang, didn't you? Whispered Greypaw when he saw when Firepaw reached his side. Yeah, I did, Firepaw admitted, but she won't leave. She trusts Bluestar to treat her fairly. Did anyone miss me? Only us, replied Ravenpaw. Around the camp, the cats who had stayed behind began to wake up. They must have scented the aggression and heard the tension in the voices of the returning cats, for they all came running into the clearing, their tails held high. What has happened? Called a tabby warrior named Running Wind. Broken-Star has demanded hunting rights for Shadow Clan in our territory, replied Longtail, loudly enough for all the cats to hear. And he warned us about a rogue cat who will harm our kits, added Willowpelt. It must be Yellowfang. Meows of anger and distress rose from the crowd. Silence, ordered Bluestar, leaping onto the high rock. Instinctively, the cats settled in front of her. A loud screech made every cat turn its head toward the fallen tree where the elders slept. Tigerclaw and Darkstripe were dragging Yellowfang roughly from her nest. She shrieked furiously as they hauled her into the clearing and dumped her in front of the high rock. Firepaw felt every muscle in his body tense. Without thinking, he dropped into a low crouch, ready to spring at Yellowfang's prosecutors. Wait, Firepaw, growled Greypaw in his ear. Let Bluestar deal with this. What is going on? Demanded Bluestar, jumping down from the high rock and glaring at her warriors. I gave no order to attack our prisoner. Tigerclaw and Darkstripe instantly let go of Yellowfang, who crouched in the dust, hissing and spitting. Frostfur appeared from the nursery and pushed her way to the front of the clan. We got back in time, she meowed with a gasp. The kids are safe. Of course they are, snapped Bluestar. Frostfur seemed taken aback. But you are going to throw Yellowfang out, aren't you? She meowed, her blue eyes wide. Throw her out? Spat Darkstripe, unleashing his claws. We should kill her now. Bluestar fixed her piercing blue eyes on Darkstripe's angry face. And what has she done? She asked with icy calm. Firepaw held his breath. You were at the gathering. Broken-Star said Darkstripe began. Broken-Star said only that there was a rogue somewhere in the woods, meowed Bluestar, her voice menacingly quiet. He did not mention Yellowfang by name. The kids are safe. For as long as she is in my clan, Yellowfang will not be harmed in any way. Bluestar's words were met with silence, and Firepaw heaved a sigh of relief. Yellowfang looked up at Bluestar and narrowed her eyes respectfully. I will leave now, if you wish, Bluestar. There is no need, Bluestar replied. You have done nothing wrong. You will be safe here. The ThunderClan leader lifted her gaze to the crowd of cats that surrounded Yellowfang and meowed. It is time we discussed the real threat to our clan. Broken-Star. We have already begun to prepare for an attack by Shadow Clan, Bluestar began. We'll carry on with those preparations and patrol our borders more frequently. Wind Clan has gone. River Clan has given hunting rights to Shadow Clan warriors. ThunderClan stands alone against Broken-Star. A murmur of defiance rippled through the cats, and Firepaw felt his fur prickle with anticipation. Then we're not going to agree to Broken-Star's demands, meowed Tigerclaw. Clans have never shared hunting rights before, Bluestar answered. They have always managed to support themselves in their own territories. There is no reason why this should change. Tigerclaw nodded approvingly. But can we defend ourselves against a Shadow Clan attack? Asked Small-Eared, tremulous voice. Wind Clan didn't manage it. River Clan won't even try. Bluestar met his old eyes with her steady gaze. We must try. We will not give up our territory without a fight. All around the clearing, Firepaw saw the cats nodding in agreement. I shall travel to the Moonstone tomorrow, Bluestar announced. The warriors of StarClan will give me the strength I need to lead ThunderClan through this dark time. You must all get some rest. We have a lot to do when daylight comes. I wish to talk with Lionheart now. Without another word, she turned and strode toward her den. Firepaw noticed the look of wonder that had entered the eyes of some of the cats when Bluestar had mentioned the Moonstone. Now the clan cats hurriedly gathered in groups, meowing in hushed voices full of excitement. What's the Moonstone? Firepaw asked Greypaw. It's a rock deep underground that shines in the dark. whispered Greypaw. His voice was hoarse with awe. All clan leaders have to spend one night at the Moonstone when they are first chosen. There, the spirits of StarClan share with them. Share what with them? Greypaw frowned. I don't know, he admitted. I know only that the new leaders have to sleep near the stone, and as they sleep, they have special dreams. After that, they have the gift of 9 lives, and take the name Star. Firepaw watched Yellowfang limp back to her shadowy nest. It looked like Tigerclaw's rough treatment had aggravated her old injury. As he trotted back to the apprentice's den, Firepaw decided to ask Spotted Leaf for more poppy seeds in the morning. So what happened? Mewed Dustpaw eagerly, popping his head out of the den. He seemed to have forgotten how much he resented the new apprentice in his eagerness to hear about the gathering. It's like Longtail said, Broken Star demanded hunting rights, Greypaw began. Sandpaw and Dustpaw sat and listened, but Firepaw was watching the camp. He could see the silhouettes of Blue Star and Lionheart sitting close together outside her den, talking urgently. Then he noticed the small shape of Ravenpaw at the entrance to the warrior's den. Tigerclaw stood beside him. Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's ears flatten as the young cat flinched away from Tigerclaw's fierce words. The dark warrior loomed over him, twice his size, his eyes and teeth flashing in the moonlight. What was he saying to Ravenpaw? Firepaw was just about to creep nearer and listen when Ravenpaw backed away, turned, and ran across the clearing. Firepaw greeted Ravenpaw as he reached the apprentice's den, but Ravenpaw hardly seemed to notice him. Instead, he pushed his way inside the den without a word. Firepaw got up to follow him when he saw Lionheart approaching. Well, meowed the ThunderClan deputy, striding up to the apprentices. It seems that Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw are about to reach another important stage in their training. What's that? Mewed Greypaw, looking excited. Blue Star wishes you 3 to accompany her on her journey to the Moonstone. Lionheart didn't miss the look of disappointment on the faces of Dustpaw and Sandpaw, because he added, Don't worry, you 2. You'll make the journey soon enough. For now, ThunderClan needs your strength and skill at camp. I will remain here also. Firepaw looked past Lionheart to his leader. She was moving from one group of warriors to another, meowing instructions to each. Why had she chosen him for this journey? He wondered. She wants you to rest now, Lionheart continued, but first go to Spotted Leaf and collect the herbs you will need on this expedition. It's a long way. You will need something to give you strength and quell your appetite. There will be a little time for catching prey. Greypaw nodded, and Firepaw dragged his gaze away from Blue Star and nodded too. Where's Ravenpaw? Asked Lionheart. He's in his nest already, replied Firepaw. Good. Leave him to sleep. You can fetch herbs for him, meowed Lionheart. Rest well. You leave at dawn. He flicked his tail and walked back to Blue Star's den. Well then, mewed Sandpaw, you better go and see Spotted Leaf. Firepaw listened for sourness in her voice, but there was none. There was no time for jealousy now. All the cats in the clan seemed to be united against the threat for Shadow Clan. Firepaw and Greypaw walked quickly toward Spotted Leaf's den. The fern tunnel was dark, not even the full moon penetrating its thick covering. Spotted Leaf seemed to be expecting them as they emerged into her moonlight clearing. You have come for some traveling herbs, she meowed. Yes, please, Firepaw answered, and I think Yellowfang needs more poppy seeds. She seemed to be feeling her wounds. I will take her some after you have gone, and your traveling herbs are ready. Spotted Leaf indicated a pile of carefully made leaf wraps. Enough for the 3 of you. The dark green herb will stop your hunger pangs for the journey. The other will give you strength. Eat them both just before you leave. They're not as good as fresh prey, but the taste won't last long. Thanks, Spotted Leaf, mewed Firepaw. He leaned down and picked up one of the parcels. As he bent his head, Spotted Leaf stretched over and gently rubbed his cheek with her nose. Firepaw breathed in her sweet, warm scent and purred his thanks. Greypaw picked up the other 2, and the friends turned and headed back through the tunnel. Good luck, Spotted Leaf called after them. Travel safe. They arrived at the entrance to their den and dropped the bundles. Well, I just hope these herbs don't taste too revolting, muttered Greypaw. It must be a long way to Moonstone. We've never been given herbs before. Do you know where it is? Firepaw asked. Beyond clan territory, at a place called High Stones. It lies deep underground in a cave called Mouth Mother? Mother Mouth? Have you ever been there before? Firepaw was impressed that Greypaw knew so much about this mysterious place. No, but all apprentices have to make the journey there before they become warriors. The thought of becoming a warrior made Firepaw's eyes gleam with excitement. He couldn't help standing a little taller. Don't get your hopes up. We still have to finish our training, Greypaw warned, as if reading his thoughts. Firepaw looked up through the canopy of leaves at the stars, glittering in the black sky above. Moonhigh had passed. We should get some sleep, he mewed. But he couldn't imagine being able to sleep with the thought of tomorrow's adventure spinning through his mind. Attending the gathering, a journey to the Moonstone, how far away his kitty pet life seemed now. Chapter 14. The cold air chilled Firepaw's bones as blackness wrapped itself around him. He could hear nothing, and his nostrils were filled with the musty scent of damp earth. Out of nowhere, a brilliant ball of light flared in front of him. Firepaw ducked his head, screwing up his eyes against the glare. The light shone, dazzling coldly like a star. Then it blinked out. Disappearing as quickly as it had come, the darkness fell away, and Firepaw found himself in the forest. He felt comforted by the familiar smells of the woods. He breathed in the moist green scents, and calmness flowed through his body. Without warning, a dreadful noise burst from the trees. Firepaw's fur bristled. It was the screeching of terrified cats racing out from the bushes up ahead. Firepaw recognized their ThunderClan pelts as they fled past him. He stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. Then came great cats, huge dark warriors, their eyes glittering cruelly. They thundered toward him, pounding the earth with massive paws, their claws unsheathed, and out of the shadows, Firepaw heard a high, desperate cry filled with grief and rage. Greypaw. Firepaw woke, horrified. His dream had vanished, leaving his ears ringing and his fur standing on end. As he opened his eyes, he saw the face of Tigerclaw peering into the den. Firepaw leapt to his feet, instantly alert. Something wrong, Firepaw? Asked Tigerclaw. Just a dream, Firepaw mumbled. Tigerclaw gave him a curious look, then growled. Wake the others. We leave shortly. Outside the den, the sky glowed with a new dawn, and dew sparkled on the ferns. It would be a warm day once the sun was up, but the early morning dampness reminded Firepaw that the time of leaf fall was not far off. Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw quickly gulped down the herbs that Spotted Leaf had given them. Tigerclaw and Bluestar sat watching them, ready to leave. The rest of the camp was still asleep. Ugh, complained Greypaw. I knew they'd be bitter. Why couldn't we eat a fat, juicy mouse instead? These herbs will keep your hunger at bay longer, answered Bluestar, and they will make you strong. We have a long journey ahead of us. Have you eaten yours already? Firepaw asked. I cannot eat if I'm going to share dreams with StarClan at the Moonstone tonight, replied Bluestar. Firepaw felt his paws tingle when he heard these words. He was itching to begin the journey. With the dawn's light and the familiar voices, the terror of his dream had left him. All that remained was the memory of the brilliant light, and Bluestar's words sent a renewed thrill of excitement through him. The 5 cats made their way through the gorse tunnel and out of the camp. Lionheart was just returning with a patrol. Safe journey, he meowed. Bluestar nodded. I know I can trust you to keep the camp safe, she answered. Lionheart looked at Greypaw and dipped his head. Remember, he meowed, you are almost a warrior. Don't forget what I have taught you. Greypaw looked back at Lionheart with affection. I will always remember, Lionheart, he mewed, nudging his head against the tabby's broad golden flank. They retraced their route to Four Trees. This was the quickest way to pass into WindClan territory. High stones lay beyond. As Firepaw bounded down the side of the glade toward the great rock, he could still smell the scents of last night's gathering. He followed the others through the grassy clearing and up the slope on the other side, into WindClan territory. The bushy slope became steeper as they climbed, and rockier, until the cats had to leap from boulder to boulder up the side of a craggy cliff face. Firepaw paused when they reached the top. Ahead of them, the ground flattened out into a wide plateau. The wind blew in a steady gust that rippled the grass and bent the trees. The soil was stony, and outcroppings of bare rock dotted the landscape here and there. The air still carried the scents of WindClan, but they were stale. Much fresher and more alarming were the pungent markings of ShadowClan warriors. All clans are entitled to safe passage to the Moonstone, but ShadowClan seems to have no respect for the warrior code anymore, so be alert, warned Bluestar. We mustn't hunt outside our territory, though. We'll follow the warrior code, even if ShadowClan can't. They set off across the plateau as the sun rose into the sky, following the tracks through the heather. Firepaw had grown used to living under a canopy of trees. Without their shade, his flame-colored pelt felt heavy and hot, and his back seemed to burn. He was thankful for the steady breeze blowing from the forest behind. Suddenly, Tigerclaw stopped dead. "Watch out," he hissed. "I smell a ShadowClan patrol." Firepaw and the others lifted their noses, and sure enough, the scent of ShadowClan warriors traveled on the wind. "They are upwind. They won't know we are here if we keep moving," meowed Bluestar. "But we must hurry. If they move ahead, they'll detect us. It's not far enough to the edge of the WindClan territory now." They moved on quickly, leaping over the rocks, pushing their way through the sweet-smelling heather. Every few steps, Firepaw sniffed the air and glanced over his shoulder, on the lookout for the ShadowClan patrol. But gradually, the odor grew fainter and fainter. They must have turned back, he thought with relief. Finally, they reached the edge of the uplands. The landscape changed dramatically, shaped and altered beyond recognition by two legs. Wide earth tracks crisscrossed green and golden meadows. Small woods dotted the land, and two-legged nests were scattered here and there among the fields. In the distance, Firepaw saw a familiar, wide, gray path, and an acid tang that stung his throat drifted on the breeze. "Is that the Thunder Path?" he asked Greypaw. "Yes," replied Greypaw. "It runs up from ShadowClan territory. Can you see high stones behind it?" Firepaw looked at the distant horizon. The land rose sharply up to a point, jagged and barren. "Do we have to cross the Thunder Path, then?" "Yep," mewed Greypaw. His voice was strong and confident, almost cheerful, as he faced the difficult journey. "Come on," Bluestar meowed. She bounded forward. "We can be there by moonrise, as long as we keep up the pace." Firepaw followed her with the others, down the hill, away from the bleak hunting grounds of WindClan, and into the lush two-legged territory. Keeping near the hedges, the cats walked on. Once or twice, Firepaw could smell prey scent from the bushes, but spotted leaf herbs had succeeded in taking the edge off his hunger. The sun was still hot on his back, even in the shadows of the hedgerows. They skirted a two-legged nest. It stood on a wide expanse of hard white stone, with smaller nests round the edges. Keeping low, the cats crept past the fence that surrounded the white stone. A sudden barrage of barking and snarling made them spin around. Dogs. Firepaw's heart missed a beat. He arched his back, fur bristling from nose to tail. Tigerclaw peered through the fence. "It's all right. They're tied up," he hissed. Firepaw looked at the two dogs scrabbling on the stone barely 10 tail lengths away. They were nothing like the pampered pets that lived in the gardens of the two-legged place. These creatures stared at him with wild, killing eyes. They strained at their ties and reared up on their hind legs. They growled and barked, their lips drawn back to reveal huge teeth, until the shout of an unseen two-leg silenced them. The cats moved on. The sun was beginning to sink by the time they reached the Thunder Path. Bluestar signaled to them to stop and wait beneath a hedge. His eyes and throat stinging from the fumes, Firepaw watched as the great monsters flashed to and fro in front of him. We'll go one at a time," meowed Tigerclaw. "Ravenpaw, you first." "No, Tigerclaw," Bluestar interrupted. "I shall go first. Don't forget. This will be the first time of crossing for the apprentices. Let them see how it is done." Firepaw stared at his leader as she padded to the edge of the Thunder Path, looked up and down. She waited calmly as one monster after another flew past her, ruffling her fur. Then, when the ear-splitting roar paused for a moment, she raced across to the other side. Off you go, Ravenpaw. Now you've seen how it's done, meowed Tigerclaw. Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's eyes widen with fear. He knew just how his friend felt. He could smell his own fear scent. The small black cat crept forward to the edge of the road. It was quiet, but Ravenpaw hesitated. Go! Hissed Tigerclaw from the hedge. Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's muscles tighten as he prepared to run. Then the ground began to tremble beneath his paws. A monster sped out of the distance and hurtled past. The black cat shrank back for a moment, then pelted over to join Bluestar. A monster coming in the other direction threw dust up where his paws had been just a heartbeat before. Firepaw felt his first shiver, and he took a deep breath to calm himself. Greypaw was lucky. A long lull let him cross safely. Then it was Firepaw's turn. Go on, then, growled Tigerclaw. Firepaw looked from Tigerclaw to the thunder path, and then walked out from beneath the hedge. He waited at the edge, as Bluestar had done. A monster was rushing towards him. Firepaw looked at the approaching monster. After this one, he thought, and waited for it to pass. Suddenly his heart lurched as he realized the monster had veered off the thunder path and was bumping along the grass. It was headed straight for him. A two-leg was jeering from an opening in its side. Firepaw leapt back, claws out, battered by the storm of wind from the two-legged monster as it roared past him only a whisker away. He crouched, trembling in the dirt, and stared as it swerved back onto the path and disappeared into the distance. Through the roaring of blood in his ears, Firepaw realized the thunder path was quiet again, and he raced across, running faster than he had ever done in his life. I thought you were fresh kill, cried Greypaw as Firepaw cannoned into him, almost knocking him over. Me too, Firepaw gasped, as he was trying to stop shaking. He turned back to watch Tigerclaw dart over the path toward them. Two legs, he spat as he arrived at their side. Do you want to rest before we go on? Bluestar asked Firepaw. Firepaw looked up. The sun was low in the sky. No, I'm okay. But he had leapt so frantically out of the monster's way that his claws felt frayed and tender. The cats carried on, but with Bluestar in their lead, the earth was darker on this side of the thunder path, and the grass felt coarser under paw. As they approached the foot of high stones, the grass gave way to bare rocky soil, dotted with patches of heather. The land sloped up now toward the sky. Craggy rocks topped the slope, blazing orange in the sun. Bluestar stopped once more. She chose a sun-warmed rock to sit upon, flat and wide enough for all 5 cats to rest side by side. Look, she meowed, tilting her nose toward the dark slope before them. Mother Mouth. Firepaw peered upward. The glare of the setting sun blinded him, and the slope was engulfed in shadow. The cats waited in silence. Gradually, as the sun dropped down behind high stones, Firepaw began to make out the cave entrance, a square black hole that yawned darkly beneath a stone archway. We'll wait here until the moon is higher, meowed Bluestar. You should hunt if you are hungry, and then get some rest. Firepaw was pleased to have a chance to find food. He was starving now. Greypaw clearly felt the same and leapt away into a clump of heather, following the prey scent that was thick in the air. Firepaw and Ravenpaw followed him. Tigerclaw set off in the opposite direction, but Bluestar remained where she was. She sat still and silent, gazing unblinkingly at Mother Mouth. The 3 apprentices gathered plenty of fresh kill. With Tigerclaw, they crouched on the stony hillside and feasted, but in spite of their easy hunt, no cat said much, and the air still felt thick with tension and anticipation. Afterwards, the cats rested beside their leader until the warmth had seeped out of the rock on which they lay, and cold black shadows reached up on all sides. Only then did Bluestar call out, "Come, it is time." Chapter 15. Bluestar stood and began to pad toward Mother Mouth. Tigerclaw walked beside her, matching her strides step for step. "Come on, Ravenpaw," called Greypaw. Ravenpaw was still sitting on the rock, staring up at the rocks. At Greypaw's mew, he stood and began to follow slowly. Firepaw realized his friend had hardly said a word the whole journey. Is he just worried about Shadow Clan, or is there something else troubling him? Firepaw wondered. It took the cats only a few moments to reach Mother Mouth, Firepaw stood on the threshold and peered inside. The blackness beyond the stone archway was darker than the cloudiest night. Firepaw narrowed his eyes, trying to see where the tunnel led, but he couldn't see a thing. Beside him, Greypaw and Ravenpaw craned their heads nervously around the entrance. Even Tigerclaw seemed unsettled by the black hole ahead of them. "How will we find our way in such darkness?" he asked. "I will know the way," answered Bluestar. "Just follow my scent. Ravenpaw and Greypaw, you will remain on guard outside. Firepaw, you will accompany me, and Tigerclaw to the Moonstone." Firepaw felt a thrill jolt through him. What an honor. Firepaw glanced sideways at Tigerclaw. The warrior sat with his chin boldly raised, but Firepaw could detect a subtle fear scent coming from him. It grew stronger as Bluestar stepped forward into the blackness. Tigerclaw shook his mighty head and padded after Bluestar. With a brief nod to the other apprentices, Firepaw followed. Inside the cave, his eyes still detected nothing. The complete and utter blackness felt strange, but he was surprised to find that he wasn't frightened. His eagerness to discover what lay ahead was stronger. The cold, damp air reached through his thick fur and into his bones, stiffening his muscles. Even the coldest nights did not hold the same chill as the air here. This ground has never known the warmth of the sun, thought Firepaw, feeling the rock smooth like ice beneath his paws. Freezing air filled his lungs with each breath until he felt lightheaded. He followed Bluestar and Tigerclaw through the darkness, judging his way by scent and feel alone. They were walking along a tunnel that sloped down and down, winding first one way and then the other. Firepaw's whiskers brushed the side of the cave, telling him where to walk and where to turn. His nose told him that Bluestar and Tigerclaw were only a tail length ahead of him. On and on they went. "How far have we come?" Firepaw wondered. Then he felt a tingle in his whiskers. The air in his nostrils seemed fresher than before. He sniffed again, relieved to smell a familiar world beyond. He could smell peat and prey and the scent of heather. There must be a hole somewhere in the roof of the tunnel. "Where are we?" he mewed into the darkness. "We have entered the cavern of the Moonstone," came Bluestar's soft reply. "Wait here. It will be moon-high soon." Firepaw folded his hind legs under him on the chilly stone floor and waited. He could hear the steady breathing of Bluestar and the more rapid, fear-scented panting of Tigerclaw. Suddenly, in a flash more blinding than the setting sun, the cave was lit up. Firepaw's eyes were wide open after the blackness of the tunnel. He closed them quickly against the cold white light. Then slowly he opened them into tiny slits and peered ahead. He saw a gleaming rock which glittered as if it was made from countless dewdrops. The Moonstone. Firepaw looked around. In the cold light reflected from the stone, he could make out the shadowy edges of a high-roofed cavern. The Moonstone rose up from the middle of the floor, 3 tail lengths high. Bluestar was staring upwards, her fur bleached white in the glow of the Moonstone. Even Tigerclaw's dark pelt shone silver. Firepaw followed Bluestar's gaze. High in the roof was an opening that revealed a narrow triangle of night sky. The moon was casting a beam of light through the hole, down onto the Moonstone, making it sparkle like a star. Beside him, Firepaw smelled Tigerclaw's fear scent growing until it became overpowering. Firepaw felt startled. Could the warrior see something else here, something dangerous? He saw a flash of movement, felt fur rush past him, and heard the fleeing paw steps of Tigerclaw racing back to the entrance. "Firepaw?" Bluestar's voice was quiet and calm. "I'm still here," he answered nervously. What had frightened Tigerclaw? "Bluestar?" Firepaw mewed again when she didn't answer. His heart was beating fast, making the blood roar in his ears. "It is all right, young warrior. Don't be afraid," Bluestar murmured. Her calm voice settled him a little. I think Tigerclaw was surprised by the power of the Moonstone. In the world above, Tigerclaw is fearless and a mighty warrior. But down here, where the spirits of StarClan speak, a cat needs a different kind of strength. "What do you feel, Firepaw?" Firepaw sniffed the air deeply and forced his body to relax. "Only my own curiosity," he admitted. "That is good," Bluestar replied. Firepaw looked back at the moonstone. His eyes had gotten used to its light, and he was no longer dazzled. Instead, it soothed him. With a twitch of his tail, he remembered his dream. This was the brilliant ball of light he had seen. Spellbound, Firepaw watched as Bluestar padded up to the stone and lay down beside it. She reached her head forward and touched the moonstone with her nose. Her blue eyes sparkled with its reflection for a moment before she closed them. Now she rested her head on her paws. Her eyelids flickered, her paws twitching occasionally. Was she sleeping? Then Firepaw remembered Graypaw's words. New leaders have to sleep near the stone, and as they sleep, they have special dreams. He waited. The chill was not so intense here, but still he found himself shivering. He had no idea how much time had passed, but suddenly the rock stopped glowing. The cavern was plunged into darkness once more. Firepaw looked up to the opening in the roof of the cavern. The moon had passed on, out of sight. All that remained were tiny stars shimmering in blackness. Firepaw could just make out the pale shape of his leader, lying beside the moonstone. He wanted to call out her name, but did not dare break the silence. After more endless moments, she spoke to him. "Firepaw, are you still there?" Her voice sounded remote and agitated. "Yes, Bluestar." Firepaw heard Bluestar's paw steps approaching. "Hurry," she hissed. He felt her fur brush past him. "We must return to camp." Firepaw raced after her, astonished by the speed with which she rushed through the blackness. He followed her scent blindly up the stone tunnel until she led him safely back to the outside world. Tigerclaw was waiting at the opening beside Graypaw and Ravenpaw as Bluestar and Firepaw climbed out of the cave. His expression was cold, and his fur was slightly ruffled, but he sat motionless and dignified. "Tigerclaw," Bluestar greeted him, but did not mention the warrior cat's flight from the depths. Tigerclaw relaxed a little. "What did you learn?" "We must return to camp immediately," Bluestar meowed briefly. Firepaw saw a look of desperation in his leader's eyes. Now the horror of his dream forced its way back into his memory. The fleeing cats, the great dark warriors, the ear-splitting wail of distress. Firepaw tried to ignore the cold fear that gripped his muscles, and followed Bluestar as she and the others raced down the dark slope away from Mother Mouth. Was his nightmare vision about to come true? And that's where we'll stop for the night. So, thank you for joining me. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and have a good evening and a good night. Till next time, friends.